Okay, Penn State fans, Dave Jones, Bob Flounders here. We both made it back from that lovely airport in Atlanta without too much trouble. Dave's munching on some breakfast. It's Wednesday morning. Plenty to get to. We just saw the college playoff semifinals. I know Dave's got a pretty strong opinion. I think he does on the Monday final, but let's get to some Penn State news, Dave. It just broke, and I think it's important to talk about because watching that Peach Bowl and thinking about it and thinking about the second half of the Penn State season, I mean, it was it was literally painful to watch them try and throw the football. It really was, and they played some teams that weren't even that good, and it was painful to watch. But
yeah, go ahead.
Dante Cephas, the guy they really, I think, had high hopes for this year from Penn State, the transfer portal guy, is according to On3 going to go back into the transfer portal. No surprise there. Did not play in the Peach Bowl. Pedestrian numbers at Penn State. I'm not sure how much of that was his fault, how much of it was just the structure of the offense, but it is an eyesore. The Penn State. It is an absolute eyesore. And
did you ponder the noun you were going to use there before?
Watch that passing game and then watch the Ole Miss passing game. It was just alarming.
It needs to be eradicated from the surface of.
It's Dave.
It needs an F5 tornado to scrub it out of the foundation of the house. Yes.
Yeah. And David, the reason I use the word eyesore is the thing that's surprising to me is
I'm thinking of the Philadelphia Inquirer section where they had actual eyesores, of people, urban landscapes around. Yes, I mean, that's what it was.
I know it's been a while, but if you just remember how Penn State opened the season against West Virginia, West Virginia's not a bad team. Aller threw for 325 and 3. Yeah. Keandre Lambert-Smith had that 72-yard catch and run score. I think on
Malik McLean had a big wow play.
It looked like it was the dawn of a new era, much like the Hackenberg era, right at the start, and then it just kept getting worse.
Let's not forget Iowa. Let's not forget Iowa,
right?
Where they made what looked like a really good tactical decision.
Yeah.
So you're encouraged about Yursich because he just chewed them up, and they beat Iowa at Iowa's game. That looks really good. Let's not forget. I mean, they dominated the ball for 45 and a half minutes. That's crazy. And how many first downs was it? 27?
It's some pretty adverse weather too. It was a wet night. It was raining a lot. It was but yeah.
September looked great.
It sure did.
And then it all just kind of disintegrated. It
started in Lake Oil at Illinois.
Yeah.
And then just kind of continued on, and the Ohio State game, and then the Michigan game, and it just the old Miss game. I just have so many questions, Dave, about what I saw at the Peach Bowl. And I think it's going to be an unsettling offseason for Penn State. I know there's a lot of high hopes for this offensive coordinator, but I don't. Drew Aller, even when he completed passes in that game, Dave, he was not accurate with the football, and I don't think he can put it all on the wideouts. I really don't.
No, but on the other hand, we saw the same stuff out of him that we saw out of Hackenberg when for a different reason. With Hackenberg, it was the free rushers coming in on him in the Temple game, 10 sacks.
Yeah.
It's like he had PTSD.
Yeah.
And got happy feet.
Yeah.
And then got defiant and almost started to crash through guys like Anthony Morelli. Remember that? He would defy rushers and just take a beating. This was different. This was a lot of wideouts that couldn't come open. And Cephas is at the top of the list, He showed at Kent that he can catch the ball.
Yeah.
He caught a ton of passes, but he couldn't get open against Big Ten DBs. He just couldn't.
Yeah.
And we saw it. We see which is more like a coach's cut. When you're live, you have to see all, and no one's better than you are at seeing 22 players all at once. I still don't know how you do it, but you can see a defense and see what's going on. And we both know that even though you do have to share some of the blame with Aller,
Yeah.
I can't remember a
Yeah.
receiving core this inert, this inept,
Yeah.
not only not really catching balls, but certainly not getting open, never taking the top off the defense. There was just not anything. And in the Peach Bowl, you've got Tyler Warren, for God's sakes, split out. How often was he split out wide? I mean, that's the ultimate indictment. You've got a tight end split out wide because you got nobody else. You're not playing Cephas. You're not playing McLean. They don't trust Trey Wallace. I mean,
DeAndre Lambert-Smith disappeared in the last 4 games of the year. 2 catches for 28 yards. Last 4 games.
Yeah. So
the thing, I guess, what I'm trying to get at is, I agree with you on the separation, but it also, they worked together for August practice through December, and it looked like there was never any familiarity between the quarterback and the wideouts as far as, Drew, I think, knew that they weren't going to be wide open, but there were times he would throw the ball and it would be like, 5 or 6 yards away from where they were supposed to make their cut. It didn't even look like they were on the same page if you just take the athleticism away.
And then in the Peach Bowl, you would contrast that every corresponding possession with Jackson Dart and Watkins and Wade and Harris and Pleikhorn and all of them. Everything was completely in sync, totally in sync, like they'd been playing with each other for 10 years, like an NFL crew. Right. So it made it even more garish, the contrast.
It's bad. Old Miss. I mean, that was very, very eye opening, because and it really does, Dave, speak to the Big Ten in general. Passing games in the Big Ten. Michigan's passing game, I know, had its moments in the playoff, but they weren't really leaning on their passing game. Ohio State's passing game was really just Marvin Harrison, and he was just an exceptional player, but there really are no good passing games in the Big Ten. And it's just kind of, to watch an SEC team come in like that and just light it up it's kind of educational. And even last year's Penn State passing game, at the end, you look at the Rose Bowl, a much, much more finished product without Parker Washington, on the field. And, Sean made some big throws in that game. Keandre had a big play. Mitchell Tinsley had big plays. And you look at what we saw at the end of this year, and it's not a 180, Dave, but it's pretty close.
I think Marcus Hagans is kind of. Do you hear him being raked over the coals at all?
I don't hear that, but I have to think.
Yeah, man.
I have to think there's going to be some interesting discussions between James and his staff, because they definitely did not get better as the year went on, and it kind of looked like they got worse.
Oh, they got worse. Yeah. They got a lot worse.
Yeah.
That move, getting rid of Taylor Stubblefield, kind of in a snit.
Yeah.
The way I heard it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Hiram Hagans, who has shown absolutely no ability to coach any of these guys up, and then they didn't scheme anybody open. It was a mess, and it just got worse as the season went on. So he's got big problems. Think of Julian Fleming, and I don't know what you have to say about Julian Fleming, but did you see him at all at Southern Columbia or not?
I didn't. He played in a high school offense that wasn't it a wing T? I don't know if you think it was a pass offense. I think it was a small school, and he was just a fantastic athlete, and he did a lot. I think he did a lot of different things for him, but he was kind of a projection, and a guy that at camps you could tell he had high Division I talent, but he also played in a wide receiver room that's one of the greatest.
Oh yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah. He's playing with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Emeka Buka.
Jameson Williams had to leave. It was so good.
And Marvin Harrison, and he couldn't even get on the field for 2 years.
Yeah.
He didn't get a ton of targets the last 2 years, and now we're expecting him, if He hasn't committed yet, has he?
I don't think there's anything official with
Yeah.
regards to Fleming. Boy, it's just
Expecting him to come in and be the savior. Well, he will be in the room as it is now. He'll be the man. Maybe he'll grow on that. You know, I don't know.
Provided he does they do connect all the dots. That's what's anticipated for sure. Nothing's official, but boy, Dave, I just that Peach Bowl, and then I was like, they didn't play. When they weren't really looking great against Delaware and UMass, you could blow it off because they got big leads, and then you didn't know what they were trying to do. But at no point did you see them ever really assert any kind of superiority, and it's because they were not superior. But I just can't believe all these 4-star wideouts that came to Penn State, and none of them have gotten better. None of them.
Yeah,
it's stunning.
You can go back to the two kids and Justin Shorter and JJ. What was his name? I can't remember.
Juwan Johnson was a guy.
Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, he's now a tight end in the NFL. But
and he went on.
Wade Blacknall was another guy. Irv Charles, another guy.
Yeah.
All 4 stars.
Yeah,
and they all just leveled off. They all just. You saw like 1 or 2 plays, and then you never saw them again. So other than Chris Godwin and KJ Hamler and Deshaun Hamilton, Parker Washington, there's been some success stories.
Johan Dotson.
You've been here for 10 years, and you can count them on 2 hands. It's a problem.
Well, the common denominator is the total transience, continual transience of an upheaval at the wide receiver coach staff position. Yeah. And ever since Josh Gaddis, it has been in constant turnover. That can't be good.
I don't think it's great that he's on his 6th OC in 10 years.
Yeah, or that either.
That's another constant.
Yeah. So at some point, it comes back to Franklin, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does.
Ohio State, for instance, and I keep coming back to this, but they are the gold standard for wide receivers in the league. They weren't great this year, but they're still leagues beyond Penn State and everyone else in the league for that matter. And Brian Hartline has been the consistent presence in there for, I think, 5 years now. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. You have to make tough staff decisions these days in college football because everyone wants to progress and ascend the ladder because the money is so big. And I know I've talked about this over and over, but the decisions Franklin has made there have been wrong. They've been proven out to be wrong, even when he had the best guys. I don't know what you do with Josh Gaddis because he wanted to be a coordinator. He moved to Alabama. Well, so be it. Because he wasn't ready to be a coordinator. He's still not ready to be a coordinator. He wasn't ready at Michigan, and they only turned that around when he and Harbaugh parted ways. So you can't really blame Franklin for that. But Taylor Stubblefield, I think you can. That was a guy who was blamed for recruiting deficiencies when they didn't have their NIL crap together. They didn't. Mm-hmm. And he was blamed for that when you got a guy like Caden Prater who was a terrific receiver at West Virginia. He wanted to be paid, and Maryland came up with the money first. Caden Prater is fantastic, and he was again in the bowl game against Auburn.
You could see them. He had some moments against Penn State in that route that you could tell that he was. If Talia could get him the ball a little bit more, he was going to do some damage.
Well, they got a lot of weapons. They got Juwan Jones and a lot of guys.
Well, he was clearly their best receiver.
Jay-Sean Jones. But they've got, I mean, he would have absolutely been the number one take the top off guy at Penn State. And Lambert Smith never would have seen that position. Yeah. So they didn't get him, and all of a sudden Stubblefield's blamed for this because they didn't have the NIL money ready, and there were 2 warring factions who were going at it. Mm-hmm. And I know it took a lot of time for different schools to put this together because it's not supposed to be part of the athletic department. It's supposed to be outside it per, the rules as they see it now. I don't know if that's realistic. I don't know if it's going to be that way in the future because I think athletes are going to be employees and then all of it will be in-house. But no one knew quite how to put it together, least of all Penn State. you could say this about Taylor Stubblefield. Under his watch, guys improved. Jahan Dotson improved. Parker Washington improved. Steep improvement. And they always ran good routes, and they always caught the ball. We haven't seen that at all. At all.
Yeah.
Since he left this last year.
Yeah. Dave, one more thing I want to get to you about before we talk about the playoffs, and I know you want to interact with some people. I think you've got some warm wishes from some people regarding your retirement a little bit later. You heard from them, but what would you do? What would you do with Bo Prabula this offseason if you're Andy Kotelnicki? I mean, he's just a guy that every time he came on the field, he made something happen. He did it in the Peach Bowl. Just about every time he came on the field, because the way that he can run, he can throw the ball. How would you approach the offseason with him and Drew?
I certainly would have just used him. I told you during the game in the second quarter, they got to put Prabula in there and run the ball against these guys.
Yeah, they didn't run it.
Mississippi's rushing defense, it was vulnerable, and you saw it at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
They were gashing up the beginning. That was the move.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to win the game, you don't worry about whose feelings are hurt, and that means Drew Aller. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's sad that their attributes don't mesh with his, and they don't. If you have a bunch of lower tier wideouts, I'll be kind, that takes away from what Drew Aller can contribute, because he's not a running quarterback. So what do you have here? You have a vulnerable rushing defense, and you have a terrific running quarterback. You can get a hat on a hat. You can get an extra blocker, and you've got your running backs already revved up. Allen and Singleton had already ripped off gash runs.
They did.
What are you doing? I mean, it's a bowl game. Everyone's telling you, the players on down, that these bowls don't matter anymore. They really don't. Yeah. So just give your guys the best chance to win, have fun, and wear down that defense. They never could hold the field.
Right.
And once the Penn State's defense got on the field, they were on there for a while, and they got worn out. Yes. I mean, that was the clear move. You could see it early in the second quarter. Put Prabula out there, leave him out there, and he wouldn't have had to throw that often. He did have one nice throw, but his vulnerability is his arm, and he did throw on the move, and that was the touchdown to Singleton for 48 yards. But he's not a guy you're probably going to live with. I don't care. Yeah. It's a bowl game. You want to win it. It gives the program momentum. So there's that. What you do from now on it's up to Kotelnicki. I mean, these guys are battling for the position in my mind at this point, but you have to ask yourself the question, who are we as an offense? What's our personality? What do we want to be? And every time you think Penn State has decided who they are, they don't know who they are. Michigan finally receded back to who Jim Harbaugh is. And we see what's happened. I mean, they are a smash-mouth team. He finally rejected what Josh Gaddis wanted to do, which was a spread offense, and said, this ain't working. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to go back to Bo Schembechler. And while it's not that severe, he kind of has a Rick Leach kind of quarterback.
Back to his Stanford days, right? Like what he did to Pete Carroll.
He had a good quarterback. He had a really good quarterback, but he ran the ball and helped that quarterback. In my mind, that's what Penn State has always really been. We had the blip with Joe Moorhead. But if you're not going to recruit guys like that, I mean, they had Blacknall and Harrison and Godwin and Gesicki. They had all this weaponry. You got to have the players if you're going to run that offense, man. You got to have guys who can high point balls and go win 50-50s all over the field, which they did. I meant Hamilton, not Harrison. Sure. Deshaun Hamilton. And they don't have that material. They're not going to have it. It's clear the portal's closed. If they get Fleming, as I see it, they're going to have Fleming. And they need to be more of a physical running offense, I think. And to me, that suggests Prabula,
Yeah, and the thing, what my read was that I think it was James. He was mindful of the fact that Bo should be on the field, and he was also a little too worried about how Drew would react. And the reason I say that, Dave, is he never put Prabula in the game by himself. He always had Aller out there somewhere. Just put Prabula in the game, and you have numbers. You know, when you put Bo and Drew in the game, you really don't have that number.
You're giving up you don't have an extra blocker.
Correct.
You don't.
Correct.
Yeah, you're limiting the reason for putting Prabula out there in the first place.
Right.
Can you imagine what they would have had with Prabula and, I don't know, 2 tight ends? And I mean, they would have road graded those guys. I think they were ready to be worn out as it was, and they never did it. It was, to me, it was a clear adjustment ready to be made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lane Kiffin made adjustments.
I don't think the co-offensive coordinators or the co-defensive coordinators had their finest hours.
Well, that's time for Franklin to say, look, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Drew Aller, you know, if you're going to get your feelings hurt, that's the way it is in big boy football.
It is.
I'm sorry. That's where you are. You're not in high school anymore, and I think anyone can understand that. Drew Aller's a really nice kid.
He is.
He's a great kid, but he might be too nice, in my opinion. I think I think all kids, and you know, my own kid is 24, and it's good to get smacked around a little bit in life. It is. It makes you tougher, and he might come out of that wherever he is. If they had put Prabula in and all his friends and his family are asking, what happened? What happened? How could he do that? Yeah. You gotta man up and take it and understand that you have to own it. And that's good for a 20-year-old. And that's the way I feel about it. I don't know.
Dave Jones, you're not a coddler. That's my takeaway. And you're probably right. You're not a coddler, and that's probably right.
You should have seen me. Hearing me yelling at Kaiser last night for barking at night again.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, he's coming
that dog
in.
Is a saint.
He heard his name. He heard his name, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to."
Look at how he looks at you after all this crap you've put him through.
He heard his name.
He still worships the ground you walk. But
I tell him, because Anna's got to sleep at night, but you have to let him out to pee, right, at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And he can't help himself. I tell him before he goes out, no barking. Remember, no barking. He's like, okay, I got it. But then you let him out, and like 30 seconds later, there's a raccoon or a possum or deer, and he's losing his mind. And he's like, I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And he is sorry. But
all right.
Tough love is good.
Let's get to a couple things. Just your thoughts. We're about 23 minutes in here. Your thoughts on the semis and what you see from the final between Michigan and Washington on Monday night. Let's go there first.
I got to ask you, who were you picking in those 2 games?
I had them both wrong. I really liked Alabama.
Yeah, me too.
Texas, their size, especially maybe along the fronts, would be the difference. But I'll tell you what, Michael Penix, fast track.
He did, man.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
he is. That's got to be Kalen DeBoer, doesn't it? It's got to be. He's progressed.
I know, but I'm just remembering, you know, I never believed after that Penn State game in 2021.
Yeah.
When they lost 24. Now, I know he wasn't playing with great talent. They lost 24-0. Brandon Smith hit him so hard. I
thought we'd seen the last of him.
I thought he was never going to play football again. I thought he was broken. I really did. I don't even know if he played the remainder of that season.
He was kind of spindly. He'd been hurt 3 times. That was the 3rd time.
Man, you're just talking about Drew and you know, kind of getting up off the deck if you have to overcome a little bit of adversity. Well, what did Michael Penix do? He's had, I think, 2 or 3 ACL tears. I think he had an upper body injury. And for him to do what he did is really phenomenal. I would never have foreseen this. And I kudos to him. Remarkable with that arm and the way he can put the ball exactly where he wants to.
Not only that, but throwing 50-yard BBs. I mean, one after another. He missed the one that would have been a touchdown. end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter. I can't remember. And I don't remember him missing a throw the rest of the game and doing it with guys in his face. I mean, standing in there and boom. Yeah. The passes look like they reminded me of Jefferson Street Joe Gilliam. You remember the way he'd swing it?
Oh boy, you lost some people there, but I know who you're talking about.
You remember the way he'd sling that? Or Michael Vick.
The quickest release I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he was the Steelers. He was actually competition for Terry Bradshaw, but he had some demons, but he could never put it all together. But man, that release was something.
The ball would fly out of his hands. Zing! You know, you could hear it fizzing.
Yeah.
Joe Namath, of course, a terrific release. And Michael Vick could just flick the ball. That's the kind of explosion on his throw. And yet it seems to be easy to catch, at least for the Washington receivers.
Yeah.
That's another receiving core that makes Penn State look like any ball. You know, I mean, you see what could have happened to them if somehow they'd weasel into the tournament. It wouldn't have been pretty.
Yeah.
At all.
When I was watching the Michigan-Alabama game, I thought of a couple things. It reminded me of like those boxing matches in the mid-'70s where there was no separation between the fighters, whether it was the middleweights, when it was like, you know, Marvin Hagler and Benny Briscoe, or like George Foreman and Ron Lyle.
I was thinking of that fight.
They just looked at each other and said, well, someone's going to break here. I want to try and break you. You're going to try and break me. Let's see what happens.
And no one ever broke.
And Alabama broke.
Well, they didn't really. They just called the wrong play.
Yeah.
I mean, they were expecting that gap to stay open in the A gap. And did you see what Michigan did? And they did that. It was like the old Chicago Bears when they used to pinch. Or no, it was the Steelers. Yeah. It was the Steelers when they used to pinch with Joe Green. They were out like this, and then right at the snap, the tackles pinched, and that gap was gone, and the play wasn't there. I didn't like the play. I didn't like the play call. When you need 3 yards, you gotta put Milroe out in the edge somewhere.
They had that running back free on the outside. He didn't. I think it was a bad snap. But if he had thrown it to the running back, he was going to walk in for a touchdown.
And the center, oh my God, what a disaster! It was kind of just a sloppy performance that we're not used to seeing from Alabama, and not a dominant offensive line at all. I mean, 55 Graham was just a constant headache. In fact, the last play, he knocked his guard, the Alabama guard, back in to Milroe, and that was the reason. Between the snap and that, he had no chance. He had no momentum.
After I thought in the SEC title game, Atlanta at the end of the game was more physical. Alabama was more physical than Georgia, and I thought that would show up in this game. It did not. I thought the more physical team was Michigan. I thought they hounded that quarterback, and they had some protection issues. And Michigan just kind of ran their offense, and they made some nice adjustments. They got their guys. The motion really caused problems. And McCarthy played better, I thought, as the game went on, because he did not. He looked shaky early,
especially for how shaky he looked in the first few minutes of the game. Yeah. I mean, you got to give him credit for that.
I do give him credit.
He hung in there. He reminds me of Rick Leach, which is ancient history, but a fighter. He is a fighter, and he's a competitor, and that bodes well for Michigan. I always thought Michigan was. I thought karma was going to get him. Maybe it's not.
They are a team that is united. They are a team that it is us against the world, and I do think there's something to that. They lost Zach Zinter. It did not. I think his name, the offensive lineman.
Yes.
He's a good player, and hey, man, they brought somebody else in, and Blake Corum, man, what a player! What a player! I'm not sure how good he's going to be in the pros, but he is an already all-time great Michigan running back.
I said after the Big Ten teams came out that I thought Kyle Monangai should have been voted first team, but that isn't to disparage Blake Corum, because when you say you don't think he's going to make the NFL, maybe it's because he's not real quick. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle to him.
Well, look, Chase Brown was great, and he might do some things for the Bengals, but it's going to take him a little time to get settled.
A very good comparison. Yeah. And Sidney, his brother, has become a better player.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the Eagles. But Michigan looked like they were going to piss that game away. They looked like they were going to find a
I
way to
thought
piss it
Alabama
away
had
the
them in
whole
the third
game.
quarter. I really did.
Huh? You
I
what?
thought Alabama had them on the ropes and ready,
Yeah.
and they came back. They came back, and that's when you see that. That's a special team. It really is, and they've been through the ringer, man. If they really have the win at Penn State under trying circumstances, the gutty performance against Ohio State, and
how about the 4th and 2 call when they needed it? That was a terrific play. It was a beautiful play.
Yeah,
to Corum.
they are. I think Michael Penix is going to get hit in this one. I know that
that's where I was going.
Yeah,
because
I think that they're going to go out of their way to make sure he knows.
He'd better buckle up. He'd better strap it on.
I mean, they remember him when he was at Indiana. It's a Big Ten game, really.
Yeah. He better strap it on and get ready to get the ball out. He's not going to be able to sit back there in his easy chair and fling the 50-yarders very often. He's going to have to do it on first down if he does it, and he's going to have to be ready to get rid of it because he did against Texas. I thought he did really well that way, but I think this is another level of defense. To me, Michigan's the best defense I have seen in this tournament, and it's not particularly close. Alabama's defense wasn't up to their usual standards at all. To see that Alabama, did you ever feel like the best? I texted to you a couple days ago. The best team in the tournament, or the best team in college football, isn't in the tournament. Is that the way you still see it, or do you see it that way at all? Georgia.
I do kind of feel pretty good about the 4 teams that got in. I mean,
not that I would have picked Georgia.
I know. I think that Georgia. Hey, they won one of their championships they lost to Alabama in the SEC title game. They got in the tournament and they made amends in a big way. I think that was the first one. They were able to come back and win that game, and that is probably based on talent. It is worthy of being in the tournament, but it was just the way that the cards fell, and I mean, Florida State obviously wasn't.
No, forget that.
Forget Florida State. Yeah, I think that it would have been nice to see a 5-team tournament somehow. You know what I mean? Because I think Georgia probably could beat at least 2 or 3 of these teams that were entered in the.
No, I think if it was in Vegas, they'd be the favorite.
Yeah.
Right now. If you made lines for all of them, that's
It's unfortunate, Davey. Listen, we've talked about your future. And you're a bit of a short timer here at PennLive. We talked about it on the video, but I know that I was talking to our guy Chris Hopkins. Did you get some nice well-wishers reaction on you?
I'd never intended for all this to come out, although actually I'm a big baby when it comes to wanting recognition. We all want to be loved. And
I'm gonna see myself out on this comment, and I'm just gonna I'm not gonna take the bait. I'm not taking the cheese, Jones.
This is the truth. Okay, this is the truth. After the last game at Beaver Stadium, I came home to Anna and I saw the plaque on the wall in front of the press box that has all the the names on it for the guys who've been there for 25 years covering the team. And I was like, and I just walked out of the place and no one said anything. And I came home to Anna and said, no one even said anything. What is it? And I talked to Chris Hopkins, our boss, and in passing, I kind of said, I thought someone would say something. No one said anything, and I was just a big whining baby. I didn't want much. I thought they'd say something, and then I don't know how this started, but apparently Hermit got this going, and then we had this giant thing that happened in the middle of. I was completely shocked in the hospitality room in Atlanta. I think
it was Mark and Neil Rudell and Mark had a lot.
Yeah, Joe, Mark, and Neil.
Yeah.
On Friday, and it was Thursday. It was Thursday, and I was stunned and really surprised and really happy. Penn State Communications put out a photo of the group photo we took. I just wanted to what I'm getting at is I wanted to fade away and not make this a big deal, but
Mhm.
that let the cat out of the bag. And then you said some really nice things in the
Yeah.
video after the game, and we almost got run over by the tractor. When we put the video up on YouTube, I was just so blown away by all the really nice
Mhm.
things people said. And I haven't answered it because I don't know how to get on YouTube on my phone. I do on my laptop. I'm going to
Mhm.
do it today. But I'm doing it now
Yeah.
since we're on YouTube.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how good it made me feel
Mhm.
because, we went through a lot of stuff with the Joe Bots and those people who are a minute sector of the community.
Mhm.
And it made me feel good to
Yeah.
think that some people appreciate what we try to do. And it was really gratifying. That's all I'm trying to say. And I
Good.
really thank everybody.
Well earned too. Well earned. I hope the well wishes keep coming. We're going to keep doing podcasts and videos, and I know Dave, we're going to hear a couple of. I think you're going to write some things maybe down the road. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but yeah, it's going to be a nice little last couple of. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but it's not. It's going to be a couple months yet. So
Yeah, I'm going till April because that's my
Penn,
67th birthday.
Penn
Yeah.
State fans, if you get a chance to reach out to Dave, clearly he would appreciate it, and we're just going to go from there. But yeah, it's been a good.
If you get a chance to reach out to Dave, do, and he'll say, "Can't you see I'm working here?"
That's it for this podcast. we got. We'll be back to talk about the national championship game and any news regarding Penn State football. But Dave, you be good to Kaiser. If he barks, he's trying to protect you.
I'm not
Don't
yelling at
yell
him
at your
anymore.
dog.
I won't yell at him today.